Bienvenidos, Yate, and welcome to AFMX Day 3, 2025. I'm your host, Diego Romero, 5'11", Santa Fe, New Mexico, and I am available for those shoot dates. Today we have Screenwriting Beyond Hollywood, low budgets, local stories, lasting careers in New Mexico. And our moderator is Kira Sipler, a New Mexico native. Kira works as a screenwriter, producer, and director, blending her creative interests with practical business experience. Her early passion for storytelling developed through high school theater and a Bachelor of Fine Arts from the University of New Mexico. As a creative professional, Kira contributes as a screenwriter, assistant director, producer, and director through her company, Jouska Road Productions, with activities in Seattle and Albuquerque. In 2022, her project was among those selected for the inaugural New Mexico Film Office New Mexico New Voices program, presented by Stowe Story Labs. Kira?
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here. I haven't done a panel in such a long time, and since I am the executive director, I get to do what I want in some ways. And as a screenwriter, I've always wanted to expand on this. But before we get started, I do want to take a moment to thank our sponsor and our venue, Half-Life. David and Nikel are amazing people, amazing filmmakers, and I'd like us to give them a big round of applause. That's for you, David and Nikel. Finding venues that support our passion is getting smaller, and Half-Life is the perfect partner for us. So thank you, David and Nikel. Okay, onwards. So I am so proud to introduce our guest speakers. Dez Baa is a member of the Screen Actors Guild and Writers Guild of America. She is an actor, screenwriter, director, and indie film producer. She began her career in the New Mexico film industry as a background actor, but soon landed speaking roles in first in Woman Walks Ahead, a 2017 film directed by Susanna White and starring Jessica Chastain. Their supporting roles have been opposite Julianne Moore, Michael Shannon, Christian Bale, Sharon Hines, I'm butchering that one. For 3 seasons, Dez Baa starred opposite Zan McClarnon. Oh my God, I'm getting in trouble for that one. As Helen in AMC's Dark Winds. She has also been a staff writer on season 2, a former Division of Natural Resources Navajo Nation employee. She has a bachelor's degree in geology from Amherst College and 2 masters of fine arts degree, one in screenwriting, another in creative nonfiction from the Institute of American Indian Arts. Overachiever. She has taught college courses in screenwriting for television and indigenous cinema. She was born in the Dene clan and raised in Española, New Mexico. Welcome, Dez Baa. Jen Rudin is an award-winning casting director and author of the book Confessions of a Casting Director, published by HarperCollins. Jen began her career as a professional child actor in New York City. She spent 7 years as casting director executive at the Walt Disney Company, casting such beloved animated feature films as The Incredibles, Chicken Little, The Princess and the Frog, and overseeing Broadway casting and domestic tours for The Lion King, Mary Poppins, The Little Mermaid, and High School Musical, another overachiever. Some recent casting credits include the Netflix animated series Arcane and Dead End, Paranormal Park. She also wrote and executive produced the short film Lucy in the Sky, starring Whoopi Goldberg, under her previous banner, Purple Glasses Productions, and cast the late Peter Bogdanovich's final film, She's Funny That Way. Wow, nice. Welcome, Jen. And Lisa Hepner is a screenwriter with 6 movies that have achieved worldwide distribution and success on video on demand platforms such as Amazon Prime, Peacock, Tubi, Roku, and network TV such as Up TV, GAC, Family, Hallmark, and CBC in Canada. Love in the Clouds, which premiered on Hallmark in May of 2025, marks Hepner's 6th project as a creator. The film was filmed in New Mexico. She is a native New Mexican and is also the author of the novel The Christmas Checklist, which is available on Amazon. Welcome, Lisa. All righty. So, let's go around and just give us a brief idea of how you got started in screenwriting.
So I took a class with David Lindblom at Northern New Mexico College. That was my first. That was my first time actually writing a script. I'd seen scripts as an actor prior to that, but didn't know how they were like created. And so I got that interview or preview, and then he encouraged me to go to the Institute of American Indian Arts because that's where he had also gone to get his MFA. So I enrolled there the last minute, got in, and started doing the hard task of figuring out also how to make a good script. Just taking classes. But first, my first introduction to scripts were, auditioning.
Oh, interesting. Oh, don't let me do my stage voice. Interesting. Lisa, how did you get your start?
Yeah, so I just want to say that I've actually been a screenwriter for 15 years or more before I actually got my first movie made back in 2021. So it was a long, long road. I was starting out kind of writing comedies and like studio level rom-coms. And back in 2016, 2017, my mom was sick, and we used to watch a lot of Hallmark movies together because it was like our escape. And I'm a screenwriter, and we were watching these Hallmark Christmas movies, and there's like 40 of them every year. And I was like, this light bulb went off, and I was like, wow, maybe I should try to write a Christmas romance. And so I broke in. The way I broke into screenwriting was I picked a smaller niche, so I went into Christmas romance. Had this other light bulb moment of like, I'm going to treat this as a business now, because a lot of us are creative and we're writers, right? But when I finally got serious about screenwriting and thought of it like a business, that's when things kind of switched for me, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, but that's how I got into screenwriting.
I started auditioning professionally at age 8, so also found my way into writing and screenplays, auditioning as a professional child actor in New York City way back when. But I was always a writer, kept a lot of journals and wrote a lot of plays and created playbills in my childhood bedroom, playing producer and agent and casting director. But in terms of actually doing the work, after writing some plays in my 20s, I snuck into grad school in my 40s, keeping my casting office open, and got my MFA in dramatic writing at NYU. And so the screenplay Lucy in the Sky, the one that stars Whoopi Goldberg, was both a short film, a full screenplay, a TV series. And so I came into it that way. But I think being surrounded by scripts at such a young age, in terms of the format and the structure, started when I was about 8. So it's a couple decades there.
I think a lot of us did that, because I remember being growing up in South Valley of Albuquerque, and it was that passion of a story, not knowing what's right venue. Sorry, guys, what am I doing? It's always me. And that's how I started. I started writing for yard plays, and no one. But I appreciate how you all are talking about non-traditional ways of getting into screenwriting, because I really don't think there is a traditional way. So, did you start writing as a catalyst because there was something inside you that needed to be said, or is it because acting jobs weren't available or other jobs weren't available? Was it a little bit of both?
Well, I think no one's paying you to write, haha. So it has to be something that you're dreaming about in your sleep. I'm so proud this semester to be teaching Intro to TV Writing at UNM in Albuquerque. 2 of my students are here today, and I keep saying to them every Wednesday, we gotta like love what we're doing, because I mean at some point one hopes you'll get paid for your services, but in the meantime you are slogging away by yourself trying to work through the writing project. And so I think it has to be something that's inside of you, that absolutely that you have to write it, because it's keeping you up in the middle of the night. And certainly, as I have, deadlines are really important, and we stress them too at UNM. But if you don't have any deadlines and it's just you working on your screenplay, it could be 20 years of your passion project. You have to just love it and feel that that's the only thing you can do to express, the story.
Yeah, to piggyback on Jen, I would just say that I teach some online classes about writing, and I always tell people, figure out your why, because your why will drive you through those like rejections, because there's tons of rejections in this industry, and it's so hard to break in that you got to know your why. And my why was I wanted to be a writer in the 6th grade. I had an English teacher that read Edgar Allan Poe's The Raven, and the hairs on my arms stood up, and I was like, oh my God, I want to like be able to touch people with my words. I want to make them laugh. I want to make them cry. I want to make them think or leave this world a little better. And so that's my why. And believe me, I've had to come back to that why a lot during the rocky road of rejections in this business.
Yeah, so kind of, well, when I first started acting, I knew I wasn't really, please don't take this to heart. I knew I wasn't going to make it as I wasn't going to make money as an actor here in New Mexico. That's impossible. And even with how wonderful our economy has prior to this past, year, we're booming. But it's still very hard for us as actors. So I'm like, yeah, it had to be kind of like, well, what else can I do? I have to be a storyteller. I want to know more about it. So that's why I enrolled in classes at Northern New Mexico College, so I can learn about video production, so I can learn about screenwriting, so I can learn what is this thing. I had to delve into it. A little bit of ADHD, you just kind of like dive into the deep end. So that's how I started doing the screenwriting. And then I just like challenges. I knew how to do poetry. I knew how to do memoir. I knew how to, I don't want to do academic writing. So I was like, okay, well, this is a new thing to me. I wanted to learn more about screenwriting. That led to me doing the MFA, which then, my teacher saying, you're good at this and, yada, yada. Then I got cast as Helen in Dark Winds, and I'm like, okay, they're looking for Native American writers. Hello. So that's kind of what, I just kept saying, hey guys, I'm here, I just got my MFA. That doesn't have anything on my resume, but I'm a Navajo screenwriter. How many of those can you actually find in the US specifically? You could probably count them on your hands. They're getting more. So anyways, that was like my into wording for Dark Winds. But it just was kind of my curiosity, essentially, to know more about the industry that I loved was what was the catalyst for me to keep going further and further and further. Go ahead.
Well, show business is a really difficult business, and the highs are high and the lows are low, and there are many different roles that people play. My decades as a casting director, I've watched great producers produce films. I've also sort of become a producer myself, because any smart casting director sort of falls into that, because we're organized and we're trying to get the darn movie made. It really depends. For me, making Lucy in the Sky, I was awarded a grant from the Alfred P. Sloan Foundation, which if you write something about science, because my story was about a 2 twin girls, one of them's on the autism spectrum, so it fell into a science category, and I did all the research. So I had $10,000 to start my movie that I wanted to make. And so with $10,000, I was going to now be my own executive producer. I was going to cast the film and wrote the film. And my husband, thankfully, is an Emmy Award-winning editor. He was going to edit it for free on the weekends. Still talks about that. Anyway, had had that. He worked on Dateline, if anyone's a fan at NBC. $10,000 is what I started with. I did a Seed and Spark campaign at the time, which is not a tax-deductible site. I later learned the second and third times I raised money, I did it through New York Women in Film and Television because people could get a tax write-off for their contribution. Anyway, our budget was $30,000. We raised it in a certain amount of time, and off we were to the races to make our short film for $30,000, 3 days of filming. Wouldn't you know, this is way before COVID. Whoopi Goldberg, on the day of the filming, came down with the flu, and we had to add another day of filming. She didn't pull out of the project and say, thanks so much, please go hire somebody else. She really said, when can we do it? So my $30,000 budget that I had worked so hard to raise, now I needed to raise an additional $20,000 to bring my crew and my actors and my location back. $20,000. Begged my parents. I think they said, okay, here's $500. And I raised the money. I did call my mentor, who said, money comes and money goes. You have got to get the money because Whoopi wants to be in your movie, and that will help you sell this project. If she pulled out of the movie, I'd say, you know what, forget the acting teacher scenes in the film or get somebody else to do it. So through one personal source, one lovely stage mother whose daughter I had cast in numerous projects, who had some money, wrote me that check, and she said, we absolutely have to finish making this movie. So I'm sharing that story. I still get chills because I was on the bathroom floor the morning that Whoopi was supposed to come. The second time, say, please let her show up. We raised that money. We finished the film. Well, the movie was not a $50,000 movie. It was a lot more money in post-production and color correction. And then you go to the film festivals. And then I had a producer that the payroll was late and all the actors had to be paid time and a half because the payment was late. I learned so much, and I would never do it again, or I would do it again very differently. So that's how I made my movie. That's how I raised my money. I was the sole executive producer, and of course a few other people got that credit, including this lovely woman who helped with the money. So that's a non-traditional way to make a movie. And then of course there's Lisa's, I want to hear your story about how you got your movie made.
Exactly. That's where I was going to go.
So, yeah, we all have different journeys, and I had no interest in producing or directing or casting or acting or anything, so I was just focusing on screenwriting. But as I mentioned, I started out writing scripts that were probably in the $5 to $30 million, big budget movies. And when I started thinking of it as a business, I was like, so if you're a producer or if you're a production company, are you going to want to give a newbie, like I'm a newbie screenwriter before I ever broke in, right? Are you going to want to give someone $3 million, and the screenwriter doesn't get this, I'm talking about the budget of the movie, but are you going to want to pay a new screenwriter for a $3 to $5 million budget movie? Or are you going to want to take a chance on a screenwriter for a $250,000 budget movie? And that's how I broke in, was focusing on smaller niches where you can make movies. There's some hot niches right now. So Christmas romance is one, faith-based movies is another, and Lifetime thriller movies is another genre. But those movies can be made for $200,000, $250,000, and it's easier if you're just focusing on screenwriting to break in with a smaller budget movie and then work your way up. By the way, when I wrote these movies and when I broke in, I didn't have an agent, I didn't have a manager, I did it all on my own. I didn't have representation. I have representation now, but it's just about focusing on smaller budget movies that could get made here or in Hollywood for fairly inexpensive.
Good point.
Man, I hope you're all taking notes. I see one here. That's a lot of information. Trust me. This is decades of amazing experience that you're getting right now. My contribution is, I'm just starting. I'm just starting at this place where, I'm in the place where I'm working on my scripts I'm working on one with my dad. But in the meantime, I'm helping other people who have scripts that are ready to go. Can we produce this? Can we get this done? Because as shorts, as Jen was saying, no one wants to pay for them. And, you're not going to find people who have the money, necessarily just wandering around wanting to give you money. I mean, it would be nice. You can call them in. I think we've learned how to call things in. Just get on your bathroom floor and pray and hope that something is going to happen. But that's essentially what you have to do. You got to go talk to people. You got to, find the people who can, work on the weekends, and you're doing those trades. And I know a lot of you are wanting to do that. But the fear of, like, I can't get this done, is like, I'm going to get this done. I'm going to figure out how. You're going to call in this favor. I'm going to call in that favor. So that's where the producing comes in, is figuring out how I'm going to get this made, because I am a director. I was talking to my boyfriend the other day, and he's like, you both are a director and you're not a director. At some point, you have to say that you are, so that you can be it, and then you've got to actually do it. So, if you're a screenwriter, it's like, I've got all these scripts. Great. Where are they going to go? How are they going to get done? You can't hope on, that someone's going to see them and think that you're amazing and great. Everyone's got a great idea. But it's up to you to kind of start getting that movement forward, finding those people who can help you with the editing, the actors, etc. And then that way, it's just beyond you having a great idea and lots of scripts that are piling up. It's actually going into action. That's the producing part. You do have to become your own producer.
Brilliant. I really appreciate that, because that's what I found out the hard way. And thankfully, that's ingrained in me already. I like to push things forward, but it does sound like you need to understand the business, how it works in the big scheme. You don't necessarily need to be that producer, but you have to understand how it works, so you know what doesn't seem right and what does seem right. And I totally agree. You have to network. You have to connect with your community, because you never know who is going to give you that check, who is going to give you that connection. And that's hopefully what we're doing with this festival and in the future. So another question I had is, how do you balance the create your vision as a writer against the producer's budget? Like, there's the practical realities of a production, and then you have your idea as a script, as a screenwriter, and your story. How do you pivot when they have to say, hey, we need to make a change, or we can't do this?
Well, I'll talk about Peter Bogdanovich. May he rest in peace. If somebody says I don't know who that is, I have, please look him up. I actually had a meeting with somebody who went, who's that? And I'm like, Peter Bogdanovich. Anyway, so the movie I cast for him, She's Funny That Way, oh boy, had been in his vault for 20 years. And I worked on it from 2009. We didn't film it until the summer of 2013. And that's Peter Bogdanovich trying to get the money for his movie. And his budgets were big. He still called movies pictures, because he's a gentleman of the old Los Angeles world. And, wanted to film in Rome, and he wanted to film in Venice. And finally, and we were trying to attach actors, which we can get into. And as a casting director, the agents are no dummy. We're trying to attach an actor, because if we attach Lucy Liu, then perhaps we'll get the financing for the movie. And Lucy knows that her name is being used to try to get the financing. And if they don't get the financing, she feels like she failed us and all of that. It's very delicate, right? Trying to get the financing. When we finally got the financing, it was because Peter had a brunch with Owen Wilson and slipped him the script one day in Malibu, and Owen liked it and sent it to Jen Aniston, and the next thing I know, I was hired, and we were off to the races with that budget. That was 5 years, and I was only 5 years with me as the casting director. He'd been working on this movie for a long time. He had to seriously reduce his budgets because we were filming in New York City, very expensive. And we managed to get a lot of favors, and this goes back to the producer. We had a relentless producer. She had just produced Dallas Buyers Club, so she knew how to do things really down and dirty. And I would watch her, and she just was on her phone all day long, calling in favors from Bergdorf Goodman's, calling in favors from Sardi's, calling in favors, can we have this location? She also said, we can't have half of Peter Bogdanovich's friends in this movie. We need to have more well-known actors for our financiers. I think it was Red Granite. Poor Peter, heartbroken because he had made all these promises to his friends. I, as the casting director, was the psychiatrist, mediator, marriage counselor. She didn't talk to him. He didn't talk to her. Both of them called me. We graciously, friendly and diplomatic, had to say we needed to get more fancy people in the movie, and we made the movie, right? So that producer, even though she drove me bonkers, and she was relentless, and she made the movie. She made it happen. And I think at the end of the day, Peter said, okay, I can't do this in Rome, I can't go to Venice, but we could be in New York at Schedule F for the actors, and we made the movie. So he had to compromise because he himself wasn't funding his own film.
Wow, that's a great story. Yeah, there is a level of people skills and compromise that is involved in it. I know I've come across that, and it's kind of heartbreaking. Lisa, do you have any experience in that?
I was just going to say, so my approach was a little different because I wasn't trying to create demand for my script and find money for it. But I was trying to find smaller niches that had the money, if that makes sense. So that's why I focused in on Christmas romance, because if you think about it, and it's not just all Christmas romance, but there's 150 to 200 Christmas movies made every year, and it's never going away, right? Christmas is not going to get canceled. And so I figured out,
Let's hope.
I mean, gosh, no. But so I figured, wow, that's a big market that has a demand. So people are always looking for Christmas romance. And so instead of creating my own demand for the script, I found where the demand was and went after that market.
So that brings me up to another point, and I think you have something to say, Dez, but before I forget, the writer has been told, or at least I've been told, that write what you know, the producers will figure it out, right? But it sounds like that's kind of changing a little bit, Like you do have to, do you still have to write for the studios? Do you still have to write for the production? Or can you just go ahead and write what you want?
Well, so I always say keep your passion project for something that you can make later on, like after you've broken in or gotten some credits under your belt, then you can make your big budget movie or your passion project. But I was going for producers that were looking for movies in the range of $250,000. Now, I just want to say that when I'm writing a script, I don't think about budget. That'll impede my creativity and I'll get stuck and I'll never finish the script, right? So I don't think about budget at all, but then when I go back and I'm done with the script, I go back and then I think from a producer's mind, and I'll think about maybe I should condense locations or limit characters or things like that, but that's kind of after the second or the third draft.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, and to echo that too, on Dark Winds we had a budget, so writing for the second season. Spoiler alert for those who haven't seen the third season. So on the episode that I wrote, season 2, episode 2, we initially had wanted to use a train, because in Santa Fe we have a train, and it's George's train. It seems to me like a no-brainer. Just ask George if we can use his train. But we have a budget. So instead, for season 2, episode 2, we ended up using a semi-truck. Well, if anyone's seen season 3, they eventually did get a train. So, but kind of to that thing, it's you write for the things that you want. This is the vision that you have. You're going to have network notes if you're writing as a TV person, TV writer, and they're going to tell you what can and can't work. Whether, then you have to deal with days on, in studio, days on the back lot, days on location, right? So you have you only can finish an episode in X amount of days, and you have to figure out which of these scenes are inside or outside. So we had to definitely go back and do rewrites. We initially wanted to have it this. Then they changed their mind. Then they said it was this. Then you want it at night. Then you want, then this person isn't available. Zahn is not available for this, or whatever. Whoever is the stunt cast is not available. So you definitely do have to do rewrites as you're going. But if initially, both for, I would say, if it's your own work, right, your passion project, write what you want. And then you're going to be able to figure out later on in the revising if it's not going to be able to work or not. Then you're going to realize, kind of to what you're saying, is eight cast. That means feeding those 8 people for X amount of days. And can you probably maybe just cut it down to 2 or 3? Maybe, those kinds of things are going to be necessary. But you're not going to know that until then you're trying to put together the budget. And you're like, why is this $50,000? This doesn't seem like for 2 days. And you're like, well, that's because you have visual effects and we have to figure out this and then the location, you've got this place is for 2,000, 8,000, whatever dollars, right? You call in those favors. You're going to learn as you go, but definitely right. Someone said you had to I'm not going to knock certain people, but they were like, we don't have, Gucci shoes. I'm like, that's not the writer's problem. Like, that's not the writer's problem. That's like production's problem. That's like the wardrobe and, fake it till you make it. You don't have to have the Gucci shoes, but at least you know that they're expensive. And what does that look like? So that's on the production side.
That's a really good point. They have that saying, kill your darlings, which I'm not really a fan of. I like to say, organize your kids in a nice way, and then put the ones that you don't need right now in the back room and keep them ready, and then bring them out. It's all about organization and anticipating what could happen. Because having to kill your darlings is just like, it's just so soul crushing. But anyway, to get into, so I was looking at the title, and it's about screenwriting beyond Hollywood. And New Mexico is growing in its content creation. And it says in parentheses, in New Mexico, because we want to highlight the industry of it, but also how can it apply to our local industry. So Lisa, I want to talk about your Hallmark movie, that it was set at the Balloon Fiesta, which is brilliant because I don't see very many of those. And it is a perfect example of how a story is rooted into the New Mexico culture. How do you think screenwriters can find inspiration in our landscape and history and stories to create content that will resonate and attract investors and producers?
So I kind of got into this kind of backwards in the sense that I was kind of going the Hollywood route first, and I had 5 movies made prior to my Love in the Clouds. But the funny thing was I'm a native of New Mexico. We moved in Oregon, then I moved back to help take care of my mom. But I was here and I was doing screenwriting from here, which is great about being a screenwriter. You can do it from anywhere, right? But it just kind of a light bulb moment hit me again. Like I was like here in New Mexico and I was going, wait a minute, maybe I should write a movie that was set in New Mexico and included New Mexico and where I'm from and all that. So I got the idea to do it about the Balloon Fiesta. And we didn't film while the Balloon Fiesta was going on. That would be a logistical nightmare. But
you get free extras,
Yeah. But I just thought, Albuquerque's and New Mexico in general is just such a great backdrop for movies. So if you can find a unique setting or a unique location or even a unique event, what Hallmark loved about the movie is 2 things: that it was set around an event, the Balloon Fiesta, which, like you said, hadn't been filmed before, to my knowledge. And it was also, they loved the New Mexico landscape. We filmed at the Tram, at El Pinto. They loved the red and green chili and all that. And so they were looking for something unique that only New Mexico can offer. So, yeah, I'd say take advantage of the landscape that we have here and the culture we have here and the people. There's so many ideas. I even was thinking last night, like Zozobra, like how come nobody's done a movie about Zozobra or whatever? But
Anybody else want to comment on that?
I'm actually working on a novel. It's a Santa Fe thriller. 3 New Yorkers show up in Santa Fe and there's a dead body 8 days later, and that's all I'm going to say. But I'm already thinking about the context of Santa Fe. I mean, if you think about a show like Law and Order, New York's a character, right? Sex and the City, New York City is a character. I'm from New York City, recently relocated to New Mexico as my stepdaughter lives here and we have grandchildren and my husband retired. But I think about New York City and how that's just in Woody Allen movies, that's just a character in the film. So I'm living in Santa Fe, and everywhere I look, it's like, another beautiful sunset, another beautiful sunrise, and the landscape, which is informing the novel, which, hopefully perhaps will be a limited series or something like that. So it's nice to be inspired by a different place, right? And also to tell stories that take place not in New York or LA, because those are the 2 places where I've lived most of my life.
It's also sometimes kind of difficult to get Santa Fe right. or anywhere in New Mexico, kind of, right? Yeah, writing for your location is really important. I mean, I know, for instance, what was the Duffer Brothers' new series that's going to be coming out is written specifically for this area. They wrote it for here, and I think that that's important. Kind of a little bit what Lisa was saying. I think that there's this tendency to bypass our own place. We want to be like, ooh, Hollywood, ooh, New York, and yeah, it's great. And then also at the same time, we forget that, but then it's also kind of difficult to get it right, because then you'll have other people who maybe you could be a writer from here, but then you have like Hollywood coming in and being like, well, don't you think you need this, and here? And you're like, that doesn't work. But it just depends on making it look good too. Making it look good, and not hokey. But I guess you could do hokey. But I think that Hollywood has done Santa Fe, New Mexico hokey enough. So if anyone's doing anything about Santa Fe, make it true. Make it New Mexico true. That's a little kind of hokey too sometimes. But make it true to, where you're at. It's great to see those scenes. Like, I know where that is. I know it, and then it resonates, right? And then people, more tourists, will come here and try to figure out what this place is all about.
I mean, I think that's what Vince Gilligan did with Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. Albuquerque as a character, and I thought he did justice. I was living in Seattle, and that's when I first the series, and I had that same exact reaction. Like, I know that place, right? And so when I grew up here, I never thought that New Mexico would become the industry that it is now, and I'm kind of embarrassed to say that, but I'm also very proud that it is, and I think that's why I'm part of this organization, is to foster and amplify and support that system. I also did the same thing. I wrote a TV pilot that was set in Mexico, because for me, it was not about my story. It was actually the story of New Mexico, so I hopefully would create jobs here, right? So we have become a major filming hub. How do you think we can ensure that local writers and creators are building a sustainable career here? Is that impossible?
Money. It's just money. I think it's just, we need to find those people who want to invest in the land that they decided to call home. There's a lot of them. They have ranches that are 60 acres and so forth, and but if we want to, we have to figure out a way that if we want to keep New Mexico and as it is, but also celebrate it. It is by the storytellers, it is by the artists, it is by the creators, and by them investing in the artistry, then in some ways we all get to kind of keep New Mexico as it is. So it's just figuring out a way that, like, maybe we can band together and kind of find that, but it's just difficult. I mean, I'm still looking. I haven't quite gone to those spaces yet. But what is the pitch? What is the thing that we can tell to when we find them, those unicorns? Hey, this is worth investing in. I'm worth the story that I have to tell is worth. And if you can manage to help me be able to support this vision that we have of creating a vision for the rest of the world, like back to Dark Winds. I mean, it's astounding to me that it was so highly rated on Netflix globally, worldwide, that everyone, like in Australia, New Zealand, and in all kinds of places, has seen Dark Winds, and they resonate, and it's so highly rated against all these other TV shows, and it's about Navajos and Native Americans in New Mexico, cops. And whereas it before, Hollywood was like, no, we're going to have white people dressed up with feathers in their head, and this is what we're going to call culture. And it's like, no, we need that authenticity. So I think that, like, just even though it may not seem like there's a light at the end of the tunnel for a lot of us screenwriters and creatives and what we're doing in our endeavors, we're not really seeing the return on investment for our work. We need to continue to keep holding that space for ourselves, for our communities, because, I hate to be kind of jokey about it. Eventually will become a trend. We already kind of sort of are, but then hold on to that and then keep pushing it forward, and have that momentum, because it does resonate. We've seen it. Those are the numbers. Those are the things. That's why we have a season 4 Dark Winds. That's why. Because your stories are important. They matter. They see them. And if we can kind of sort of like say, turn Hollywood on its side and say, no, we have the stories right here. We've always been storytellers. We've always had that ability. We are the vessels and we are the carriers to serve the story that we have. I feel like, we can keep moving forward. And it doesn't have to be dependent on what Hollywood says it is. It's what we say we want it to be.
Great point. Great point. Yeah. Anybody else have anything to say about that? I want to ask one more question, and then we'll open it up to Q&A. This is a typical question. I kind of feel that maybe the audience has some questions, so I'm just going to, move on here. What is one piece of advice you wish you had had before you started this whole process? Oh. I didn't mean to stump you.
For me, I started out as a starry-eyed screenwriter, big dreams. But I guess I just wish someone would have told me, this is a long game. Those overnight success stories that we hear about are 15 years in the making, right? So it's like just thinking you're going to write your first screenplay or whatever, and it's going to get made, and it's going to be this huge success. I was kind of in that space of thinking, and it's great to dream big, but it's also important to realize this is a long game, and ultimately it boils down to being a business. And so if you look at it like a business, you're going to gain more traction earlier than all the rejection that I had along the way, I think.
Yeah, rejection is I just think back, the biggest rejection I had was at age 12 because I was tested for Growing Pains, that show, on ABC with Tracy Gold, and it was between me and Tracy, and I was, the New York choice, and she was in LA, and I was going to be moving with my mom to LA, and the contract was negotiated, and maybe my parents were going to end up getting divorced, and she got it. She'd had more TV experience than me, which now makes sense, but the rejection that you do go through is very hard to process. And as a writer, I'm going to hold up my book, which is like my baby, Confessions of a Casting Director. Did not happen overnight. And when I got the good news from HarperCollins that they were going to publish my book, that's one of the big highs, right? And it's not about money, because there's not a lot of money, but those highs and the lows. So I think the advice I would tell my younger self is, you have to be so strong to keep going up the hills of this business, because there's no trajectory. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here. We would know. It's not like you go and become a banker and then you can, work at Citibank. And Marisa, my student at UNM, did a long time ago work at Citibank. But it's really hard. And I'm a runner, and so I'm always talking to actors about, the training for marathons and half marathons, and the training for your acting career or your career in show business is very similar. This past Sunday, I was running the Santa Fe half, and God, it was hilly. God, it was hard. And I was like, I'm just going to do water aerobics, and I'm going to take up tennis. This is awful. And then as I said to my class, my UNM TV writing class on Wednesday, you have to keep going up the hills, because they do make you stronger. And we don't progress unless we challenge ourselves. And choosing to be a screenwriter, I think, is or be in show business, such a challenging profession. Be a dentist, be a wrist surgeon, something that you have job stability and it's needed. Those are skills. I'm not kidding, becoming a dentist, very important. But I think just the rejection, because I faced so much rejection as a child actor, and thankfully had good parents and did not end up down a dark road, right?
It's interesting, because I was trained in theater, and I said I'm not going to become an actor because I couldn't handle the rejection, so I became a writer. Boy, that was awakening. So, and I love the metaphor about running, because I was also a marathon runner, and it is the long game. It's the pacing. It's controlling that inner voice. It's pushing through when it's like mile 23, if everybody's ever done a marathon. And when you're going to get to the finish line, you just need to calm the voices and the pain a little bit and get through it. So I have a question for the audience, but I forgot. Dez, do you have anything to say about that?
Yeah, no, I just echoing both what Jen and Lisa's saying. You know, when I first started out as acting, that was kind of my experience, was like ejection. And also too, I mean, I started out as a geologist and then decided, took the left turn to Albuquerque. And so that's where I started in the film industry. I'm just kind of sort of starting still at the same time. So please, if you are on the fence about starting a new endeavor, this is my saying, yes, do it. But also put a lot of padding on your forehead, because you're going to be banging your head against the wall. And there is that rejection. It is just constant. I got cast in a feature film up in Four Corners, and I quit my job. And, you know, when am I going to ever have an opportunity to be in a feature film or any film ever in my life? This is like a once in a lifetime opportunity. I did it. Then it was a non-union job. I was on my way to the rehearsals, and an hour in, and he's like, "Oh yeah, by the way, I found someone else." And so, like, you know, like, what the hell am I doing? That's how I started with background acting. And I was like, right, I'm going to start, you know, every opportunity, even now, as I'm starting to move into directing and producing, I'm finding those challenges that I kind of feel like this is my moment to stop, right? This is when I'm like, okay, this is the thing that you're going to be running into. No money, or, you know, difficult people, or, you know, someone who, you know, how do you say no? How do you have boundaries, right? Those are kinds of really important things. How do you pick up the phone and talk to people? How do you write that email? All of the things that are tripping you up in your personal life, they're going to trip you up in your business. So we got to figure those things out, right? But there are challenges and there are ways to move ahead, not necessarily obstacles to tell you to stop. You can always choose to stop and not have an obstacle. You don't need to have that thing in the way to prove to you that you need to stop. You can just say, I'm done, period. You don't need to have an excuse. But you could have an excuse to say, this is when I'm going to start moving to the right or to the left. If I'm trying to get off the stage, if I go forward, I'm running into something, right? But if I move my perspective, oh, there's a way down, or I can go down this way. There's a person on this side, I would just mean, excuse me. There's always going to be a way to change your perspective on the situation that you have, and don't ever fool yourself that that's a reason to stop. It just means you need to change course, change direction. And then you are the only person to tell you to stop. That's it.
Beautifully said. I agree 100%. And I think for me personally, I didn't get to know myself as a person, as a writer, until I got into the film industry, because you have to figure out what you do want, what you do say, what your boundaries are, and the person that you want to be and who you are. And as a writer, if you're going to defend your story, you got to know what you're doing. So a good sense of self is really great. I'm really curious. How many of you have thought, why am I doing this? Yeah. And we're all still here, and we're all still kind of, supporting each other, and we will continue to do that because the process is amazing. I love writing, and I'll do despite the challenges.
We're wrapping up. I just want to say, if there's any actors, please just go to jenrudin.com. There's a way that you can send your photo and resume, because I do have to get back to Santa Fe at some point. But just jenrudin.com, and please send your stuff, voiceover, like just a pitch for that, if you're an actor, because I'm not going to be able to stick around all that long. And then just, Confessions of a Casting Director. It's really, it's a fun book that really shows the insight into show business. And that's my final concluding thoughts and my pitch. Your movie. How can we see your movie?
So Love in the Clouds is on Hallmark. I think it's on Hallmark Plus. But I do have a series that I wrote, The Christmas Checklist. It's coming out on Up TV November 29th. So it'll be 4 episodes. Thanksgiving.
You can reach out to me at Dez Baa on Instagram and Facebook, or dezbaa@gmail.com if you have any questions or anything you want to get in touch with me about. I'm just trying to figure out how to create work for myself so that I can toss some stuff around and like we can like lift New Mexico and from the ground up. We're gonna create our beautiful stories.
And that's the thing I would add is that we're all still learning and we're all still growing. No matter where you are, we're all still learning and growing.
Thanks, everybody. Great group.